trade volumes and revenues, creates jobs, promotes development, and significantly reduces poverty. Whether constructing or rehabilitating more than 16,000 kilometers of cross-border roads, enhancing regional infrastructure network, passengers a year, supporting ICT projects that will soon expand internet connectivity to 30% by 2025, building one-stop border posts, sharing knowledge, or facilitating policy dialogues, the African Development Bank is
I now have the honor to call upon His Excellency Mr. Cesar Augusto Mba Abogo, Minister of Economy, Finance and Planning of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea, who is also Governor of the Bank Group for Equatorial Guinea and the Chairperson of the Boards of Governors of the Bank Group. Please go to the rostrum for your speech.
Su Excelencia Obiangema Mbasogo, Presidente de la República, Jefe de Estado y de Gobierno y Presidente fundador del Partido Democrático de Guinea Ecuatorial, Excelentísima Señora Doña Constancia Mangue, Primera Dama de la Nación, Su Majestad David Mojato Berrén Seiso, Rey de Lesotho, Su Excelencia Presidente Tshisekedi de la República Democrática de Congo, Excelentísimos señores representantes de jefes de Estado y de Gobierno presentes en esta sala, Su Excelencia, Excelentísima Señora Teresa Efua Sangono, Presidenta del Senado Nacional, Excelentísimo Señor Gaudencio Moaba Mesú, Presidente de la Cámara de Diputados, Excelentísimo Señor David Nguema, Presidente de la Corte Suprema de Justicia, Excelentísimo Señor Don Vicente Eate Tomí, Vicepresidente del Consejo de la República, Excelentísimo Señor Don Marcelino Nguema Onguene, Defensor del Pueblo, Excelentísimo Señor Don Francisco Bamasue, Primer Ministro del Gobierno, Excelentísimos señores miembros de Gobierno de la República de Guinea Ecuatorial presentes en la sala, Excelentísima Señora Coloma Ejang Bengono, Alcaldesa de Malabo, Excelentísimo Señor Secretario General del Partido Democrático de Guinea Ecuatorial y su adjunta, Excelentísimo Señor Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, Presidente del Banco Africano de Desarrollo, Excelentísimos señores gobernadores de miembros regionales y no regionales del Banco Africano de Desarrollo, Excelentísimos señores directores ejecutivos, Excelentísimas y distinguidas autoridades presentes en esta sala, damas y caballeros, señoras y señores. En mi calidad de Ministro de Hacienda, Economía y Planificación y también Presidente de la Junta de Gobernadores de las Asambleas, el año pasado, empezando por Resiliencia, el año pasado cumplimos 50 años de independencia y nuestra historia es un claro ejemplo del triunfo ante la adversidad y la superación de los traumas. Guinea Ecuatorial ha pasado de ser uno de los países más deprimidos del planeta a principios de los 80, uno de los más pobres durante la década de los 80 y los 90, a lo que ustedes están viendo hoy. Un país dotado de buenas infraestructuras, un país en el que la calidad de vida de las personas ha mejorado enormemente y un país que vive en paz y de forma pacífica, estable y pacífico. Para todo ello, el liderazgo visionario e inspirador de Su Excelencia el Presidente de la República ha sido la clave y también una gestión responsable de los recursos del petróleo y la determinación de las ciudadanas y ciudadanos de esta nación de vivir en paz. Todo eso ha hecho de nuestro país un ejemplo de estabilidad, paz y prosperidad en nuestro continente. He hablado antes del concepto de resiliencia porque la resiliencia significa la capacidad que tenemos de superar los traumas, de sobreponernos y seguir adelante. Entonces, Guinea Ecuatorial es un país que, en nuestra opinión, simboliza lo que es la resiliencia. Somos un país resiliente, somos un país que controla su propio destino. Eso lo hemos conseguido con el liderazgo visionario de su excelencia el Presidente de la República y la determinación de todas las personas de Guinea Ecuatorial de seguir adelante. Hace apenas un mes y medio celebramos la tercera Conferencia Económica Nacional, donde presentamos a la comunidad nacional e internacional el resultado del Plan Horizonte 2020, que es la visión del Presidente de la República y de todos los estamentos de la nación, sector privado, sector público, sociedad civil, todos. Es la visión que se tuvo en el año 2007 de qué querríamos que fuera Guinea Ecuatorial. Hemos hecho esta conferencia a la que han acudido todo el mundo, comunidad nacional e internacional, socios al desarrollo, y hemos presentado el balance de lo que ha sido el Plan Horizonte 2020 y lo que se demuestra es que este país ha conocido una transformación espectacular en los últimos años. Una transformación espectacular que a menudo ha pasado desapercibida para buena parte de la comunidad internacional y que hoy en estas asambleas anuales del Banco Africano de Desarrollo y del Fondo Africano de Desarrollo tenemos la oportunidad de mostrarles. Les estamos mostrando a esta Guinea Ecuatorial que pasa a menudo desapercibida y les estamos mostrando los frutos del esfuerzo, de la gestión que ha hecho el gobierno de este país con los recursos del petróleo. El segundo concepto del que quería hablarles es el de la utopía. Y en ese sentido me voy a referir primero a una cita que voy a leer literalmente. Un mapa del mundo que no incluya utopía no es digno de consultarse, pues carece del único país en el que la humanidad siempre acaba desembarcando. Y cuando lo hace, otea el horizonte y al descubrir un país mejor, zarpa de nuevo. El progreso es la realización de las utopías. Cuando hablamos aquí de utopía nos referimos a África, porque África simboliza el concepto de utopía. A mediados del siglo pasado, la utopía de los pueblos africanos era la independencia, la autodeterminación y la capacidad de decidir por el destino propio. Pero parecía imposible al principio. A mediados del siglo pasado, en los 50, 40, parecía imposible, pero se logró. Conseguimos las independencias. Hoy, nuestra utopía es la integración regional. Y el Banco Africano de Desarrollo y el Fondo Africano de Desarrollo tienen la misión de impulsar dicha integración para la prosperidad económica de todo el continente. La zona de libre comercio continental ya está en marcha. 6 de las 10 economías que más crecen en el planeta son africanas. El crecimiento promedio del PIB real del continente africano es del 3,5%, por encima de mercados emergentes y otras economías en desarrollo. Pero también tenemos desafíos. El futuro es brillante, pero tenemos desafíos. En las proyecciones de crecimiento poblacional que se manejan en la fecha, avalan y exponen que necesitamos crear 55.000 empleos diarios, empleos decentes, de aquí al 2035. El potencial es enorme, pero también, como he dicho, los desafíos. Por esto, estas asambleas que se celebran en Guinea Ecuatorial, con el lema de integración regional para la prosperidad económica, son muy importantes, porque definen lo que es el banco y lo que va a ser nuestro continente. La celebración de estas asambleas anuales, justamente aquí en Guinea Ecuatorial, en la región del África Central, es propicia, es crucial, porque para los diferentes escenarios que se manejan en la actualidad, la región que más se va a beneficiar de esta integración regional es nuestra subregión del África Central. Por eso nosotros, cuando hemos hablado de estas asambleas anuales, hemos dicho que es un privilegio para Guinea Ecuatorial, pero no solo para Guinea Ecuatorial, sino para todo el conjunto de la subregión. Estamos abriendo nuestra subregión, estamos mostrando lo que es nuestra subregión. Y Guinea Ecuatorial se siente particularmente honrada de que todo esto esté sucediendo aquí. Quiero acabar con una última cita que seguro todo el mundo conoce. Parece siempre imposible, es la cita, parece siempre imposible hasta que se hace. Esta cita es de Nelson Mandela y lo que queremos decir con ella es que a finales de la década de los 80 del siglo pasado, la integración regional parecía una utopía lejana, pero hoy ya lo estamos haciendo. Lo estamos haciendo, nuestro continente se está integrando para la prosperidad de todas las africanas y todos los africanos, y el Banco Africano de Desarrollo es nuestro vehículo, nuestro principal motor para esta integración regional que beneficiará a todas las personas de África. Para nosotros es un privilegio y un honor presidir las asambleas la Junta de Gobernadores de las asambleas anuales del Banco Africano de Desarrollo y del Fondo Africano de Desarrollo este año, en este preciso momento y con esta precisa temática, que estamos confiados en que creemos firmemente que va a marcar un antes y un después en la historia de nuestro continente. Con estas dos citas, la de antes, la de la utopía, que es de Oscar Wilde, y con la del el difunto Nelson Mandela, nuestro llorado Nelson Mandela, concluyo aquí mi alocución de bienvenida, esperando que todos ustedes se tomen el tiempo para conocer no solo Sipopo, no solo Malabo, sino también otras partes de Guinea Ecuatorial, porque la transformación de la que les hemos hablado antes en 10 años no solo se vive aquí en Malabo, no solo se vive en esta isla, se vive en todo el país. Guinea Ecuatorial se complace en acoger estas asambleas anuales y esperemos que su estancia aquí sea productiva y placentera. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, the Chairperson of the Boards of Governors. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome the President of the African Development Bank Group, Dr. Akinwumi Ayodeji Adesina, who is apparently a AAA president of a AAA financial institution, to the podium.
Thank you. Excellences, Monsieur le Président Obiang Nguema Basago de la République de Guinée équatoriale, notre Président hôte, accompagné par Madame la Première Dame, de pays ont applaudi pour la Madame la Première Dame d'être ici ce matin. Nous avons plusieurs chefs d'État qui sont ici. Son Excellence, Monsieur le Président Félix Antoine Tshisekedi, Président de la République du Congo démocratique. Nous avons Sa Majesté le Roi Letsie III de la Royaume de Lesotho. Excellence, Monsieur le Premier ministre de la Royaume de Eswatini. Nous avons plusieurs chefs d'État aussi qui sont représentés ici ce matin. Il y a le président Paul Biya du Cameroun, qui est représenté ici par M. le ministre Opazé. Il y a le président Kagame de la République du Rwanda, représenté ici par Mme Ouera, ministre. Le président de l'Afrique, République de l'Afrique centrale, représenté aussi par le ministre Meloa. Le président de la Côte d'Ivoire, représenté ici par le ministre Adama Kone. Nous avons plusieurs personnes très importantes ici, dans la Guinée équatoriale. Il y a son Excellence Pascal Assoué, le Premier ministre de la République. Excellence Madame Asangono, le président du Sénat de la République de Guinée équatoriale. Excellence Mwamba Messu, le président de l'Assemblée, du Parlement de la République de Guinée équatoriale. Excellence Obiang, président de la Cour constitutionnelle. Et il y a les membres du gouvernement, les honorables membres du gouvernement qui sont ici. Honorable gouverneur de la Banque africaine de développement, membre du Parlement de la République de Guinée équatoriale. Monsieur le secrétaire général de la partie de la République de Guinée équatoriale, les membres de la Corps diplomatique, les représentants des organisations internationales accréditées ici. Il y a Madame la maire de la ville de Malabo, et il y a le membre du conseil d'administration de la Banque africaine de développement, la haute direction de la banque, le membre de la banque. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, membres de la presse, soyez le bienvenu. Je voudrais vous souhaiter la bienvenue aux assemblées annuelles du groupe de la Banque africaine de développement, cet événement annuel restera toujours une occasion privilégiée de partager avec vous les points de vue de la Banque sur la situation économique de l'Afrique, nous informer des activités de la Banque et d'échanger sur la question des questions émergentes qui sont tendent l'avenir du continent. Les assemblées de cette année ont pour thème l'intégration régionale. Il y a 3 ans, en Zambie, les assemblées avaient mis l'accent sur la priorité éclairer l'Afrique et l'alimenter en énergie. L'année après, en Inde, nous sommes penchés sur la priorité nourrir l'Afrique. L'année dernière, en Corée du Sud, nous avons privilégié à la priorité industrialiser l'Afrique. Cette année, nous mettons l'accent sur la 4e priorité de la High Five, à savoir intégrer l'Afrique. Excellencies, governors, ladies and gentlemen, regional integration is crucial for Africa's accelerated development. We must connect landlocked countries to ports. We must allow free movement of people. Investors must be able to invest beyond the borders of countries. And Africa must trade more with itself. Apart and divided, Africa is weakened. Together and united, Africa will be unstoppable. We're delighted that you've all joined us here today in this beautiful country of Equatorial Guinea, a country you will find to be exemplary in terms of infrastructure. Thank you, Your Excellency, President Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, for hosting this year's annual meetings and for your generous hospitality. Please let's give it up to the country for what they've done for us. Thank you. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate you, Your Excellency, Mr. President, on your new finance minister, a young, bright, and very dynamic 39-year-old economist who had just spoken before me, who used to be a former professor of economics in Spain. My interactions with him showed me that you made a very smart choice, Mr. President. By his appointment, you have demonstrated remarkable confidence in the youth as you build towards the future. Well done, Mr. President. The confidence of the youth can be found when I visited here a place called Tech Campus, an IT and coding boot camp right here in Malabo. There I saw dynamism, resourcefulness, and entrepreneurship of the youth at work and in action. The basketball stadium was jam-packed, not with basketball players, and so that you just know I'm a big fan of Toronto Raptors and I hope they win this game, but with budding young entrepreneurs. The Tech Campus is laying the foundation for what will become the Silicon Valley, or should I say, the Malabo forest of IT in Equatorial Guinea. Among them is Sigfredo, who developed a moving robot and wants to study aeronautics and robotics. 18-year-old Angelica, who created an intelligent stick for the blind and visually impaired. Mateus, who, inspired by the beauty of his country, designed an impressive online digital portal. Celso, who has a well-thought-out agribusiness idea for processing mangoes and avocados. And Quentin, who is developing a safety and security app for taxi users. And all of that being channeled and directed by a young lady called Olivia. The youth of Equatorial Guinea, just like in other parts of Africa, are the best assets that we have. Mr. President, right here, your youth are your best assets. Mr. President, keep up your determination to invest in the youth. Thank you. When I visited Equatorial Guinea a few weeks ago, and you so warmly received me, despite your having been bereaved at the time, I was so amazed with the level of world-class infrastructure, investments that have been made here for decades under your leadership, I encourage delegates to take some time to visit this beautiful country, amazingly beautiful country, and take in the depths of its vast development. In the process, you will discover, like I did, the Equatorial Guinea that, as they say, you wished you knew. We are delighted that several heads of state are with us here today, including those from Central Africa region. This region is endowed with vast amount of arable lands, forests, abundant water resources, and rich biodiversity, making it easily one of the world's leading treasures of natural resources. This is the first time the bank is holding its annual meeting in this critically important Central Africa region. In the past several years, we have invested over $13 billion in this region. And for every single dollar that we invested, the region has leveraged $36, which means an incredible rate of return of 36 times. Our investments have helped to construct the Central Africa fiber optic networks that connect the population with a faster and less expensive access to internet, and in the process, boosting business and regional integration. Our efforts to the Congo Basin Fund, and many of the donors are here, have helped to preserve forests and biodiversity. We are building a prosperous, climate-smart, and environmentally secure future for Africa. Today, Excellencies, a climate-resilient Africa is now urgent more than ever before. As we all witness the recent devastation that was caused by the cyclones in Mozambique, Malawi, and in Zimbabwe. The African Development Bank rallied support behind these countries by providing immediate disaster relief. And just last week, our Board of Governors approved $100 million in funding to support their rebuilding efforts. The global community must support Africa to adapt to climate change and ensure resilient economies for a greater future. And the future of the African continent is getting brighter. The 2019 African Economic Outlook of the African Development Bank shows general economic performance has continued to recover. Growth is projected at 4% in 2019 and 4.1% in 2020. This is a strong momentum from the growth of only 2.1% posted as recently as 2016. It is worth noting that 40% of African countries are projected to see growth of at least 5% this year, as commodity prices recover and domestic demand and infrastructure investments boost growth. There's excitement in the air on Africa's economic opportunities. And those opportunities are boundless. The newly minted African Continental Free Trade Area will make Africa the largest free trade zone in the world, with combined GDP of over $3.3 trillion. Pulling down tariff barriers alone will spur trade by at least 53%. And with the elimination of non-tariff barriers, trade could easily double. To help accelerate regional integration in Africa, the bank has been at the forefront of the development of critical infrastructure. Let me share with you some of our results. For at the end of the day, it is action and results on the ground that counts. Here in Central Africa region, the African Development Bank is financing the Nachtigal Dam in Cameroon, supporting the development of the Inga Dam, and I was here this morning with President Tshisekedi. We're discussing that also in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we will support Corridor 13 road that will link Congo-Brazzaville with Central African Republic and with Chad. These are all part of the African Development Bank's vision to integrate Africa. Through the African Development Fund, and it's a great fund, and we are grateful to our donors for that support, we finance the construction of the amazing Senegambia Bridge, a dream come true for Senegal and for Gambia, the Gambia. We are doing a lot to interconnect Africa and drive investments into the continent. The African Development Bank is right at the heart of making the African Continental Free Trade Area a success. Trade finance will be crucial for that success. The bank has already invested over $1 billion to support trade finance, which in turn has also helped to support 111 transactions in 43 countries and leverage $7 billion worth of intra-regional trade. We've invested another $1 billion in the Afri-Exim Bank, including $650 million for trade finance lines of credit and $350 million for trade insurance. We've also invested $630 million in the FirstRand Bank and the Absa Bank, both of them in South Africa, to support the expansion of access to trade finance for 20 countries. Our work, together with the African Union Commission and the regional economic communities on the Africa Visa Open Index, continues to monitor how Africa is doing on the free movement of people. Progress, Excellencies, has been made, but much work still needs to be done. The Openness Index shows that in 2018, Africans did not require visa to enter 25% of the countries in the region. They can get visas on arrival for 24% of the countries, but they still need visas to enter 51% of the countries. To integrate Africa seriously, we should bring the walls down all across. The free movement of people, and especially labor mobility, will be very crucial for promoting investments. To accelerate investments and mobilize greater resources for Africa, the African Development Bank, together with its partners, launched the Africa Investment Forum. Held for the first time last year in Johannesburg, South Africa, the event attracted over 2,000 participants and investors from 53 countries around the world, including pension funds and sovereign wealth funds. The results were simply amazing. Investments worth over $38.7 billion were mobilized in less than 72 hours. Just listen to Canada's Chris McLean, the Chief Executive Officer of Shaw Share Capital, a private equity fund with rising investments in Africa. He says, and I quote, "I have been traveling to Africa for over 20 years doing investments. I have never seen anything like the African Investment Forum. It created seismic shifts." A good example of such seismic shifts is the $2.6 billion deal by investors in South Africa to build Accra SkyTrain in Ghana. Also, the African Development Bank, Africa 50, and other partners signed a $500 million financing agreement to construct the first road and rail that will link the two Congos, the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Republic of Congo. And we are only just getting started. The 2019 Africa Investment Forum will hold in Johannesburg from 11th to 13th November, so please, mark your calendars. In 2018, the bank helped to finance and complete a number of major infrastructure projects that are very transformative, including 2 international airport terminals in Ghana and Senegal, and the regional express train of Senegal, the first in the West Africa region. And just to make sure that we are very supportive of the president there, one of my vice presidents, Amadou Hott, is now the Minister for Planning and Economy of the Republic of Senegal. I just want President Macky Sall to know that that is our equity investment in his government. We've provided $16 million to ECOWAS to support feasibility studies for the Lagos-Abidjan Highway. Our investment in the 1,000 kilometers Addis Ababa-Nairobi-Mombasa Highway is transforming trade between Ethiopia and Kenya, which has risen by a whopping 400%. Our investments to expand the Walvis Bay port in Namibia is opening up trade connections for several landlocked countries all across the SADC region, such as Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Zambia,
and expanding trade volumes from 300,000 to 1 million 20-foot equivalent units. The bank's investments are making the road from Cape Town to Cairo a reality. Just last year, I had the pleasure of being with President Magufuli of Tanzania to inaugurate the bank-financed 251-kilometer road linking Dodoma to Babati, a critical missing link in the 10,288 kilometers Trans-Africa Highway number 4 that connects Cape Town, Lusaka, Dodoma, Arusha, Nairobi to Cairo. Rehema Tukai, who works in Dodoma, had great things to say recently about this road. With a broad smile on her face, she said, "Visiting my family in Kondoa on the road used to take me 5 hours. Now I get to see them in just a little less than 1 hour." We are doing more, though, than infrastructure. The bank is also supporting the integration of financial markets across the continent through the Africa Financial Markets Initiative, which is helping to link stock exchanges with a combined total market capitalization of $1 trillion. This includes Johannesburg, Nairobi, Casablanca, Windhoek, Lagos, and Cairo stock exchanges. As we connect nations through quality transport infrastructure, support ICT backbone networks, and financial markets, the bank is poised to further boost regional integration in which we have very, very strong comparative advantage. And so let me just be clear. Regional integration will be totally meaningless unless women, who form majority of the traders, effectively participate. To advance opportunities for women, the bank's Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa, otherwise called AFAWA, is being rolled out to leverage $3 to $5 billion specifically Women Entrepreneurs Finance Initiative, WIFI, that's what the World Bank, has just invested over $68 million in AFAWA. Now, this is very exciting for women across Africa because, indeed, when women win, Africa wins. To help Africa to achieve more, we are positioning the bank very well to meet the challenges ahead. I am pleased to report that since we last met in Busan, a lot has happened to your bank. The AAA rating of the bank was again maintained. I don't mean my own AAA, I mean the bank's AAA rating, as it has been for the past several years. We've always done that. Our loans to countries have expanded, and so have our disbursements. We are paying greater attention to the quality of our projects, as we should. The bank was rated the 4th among 45 development organizations in the 2018 Aid Transparency Index report, a clear sign of progress made in ensuring greater transparency and reporting across all of our operations. The bank introduced several balance sheet optimization initiatives that have generated global attention, including the Room to Run instrument that sold off some of the risks on our loan books to the private sector in a $1 billion initiative, the first by any multilateral development bank globally. And it's not just about money, it's all about development impact. In the past 3 years, the bank, with your support, has steadily delivered significant impacts. It has connected about 16 million people with access to electricity, 70 million people with access to agricultural technologies to achieve food security, 9 million people with access to finance from private sector companies, 57 million people with access to improved transport, and 31 million people with access to improved water and sanitation services. Yet, Africa needs more, and Africa deserves more. The time is right to do more for Africa. We cannot postpone what is good for Africa always into the future. As Africa's bank, we will continue with your support to push for greater results, for more development and better quality for the life of Africans. That's why the African Development Bank is seeking your strong support for the general capital increase of its bank, the African Development Bank, the commercial part of the bank, and also for the replenishment of the African Development Fund, a crucial fund for Africa's development. We are grateful for the strong support you gave yesterday. We had a long meeting at the conclusion yesterday on the third Governors Consultative Committee. And I want to thank all the ministers and the governors for that. We made great progress in those conversations. And in July, we will also meet with our donors for the 15th replenishment of the African Development Fund. Our shareholders, you, the member countries of the bank, you are our best supporters. Just like that remarkable effort on Africa's regional integration, your collective unity and support for the bank's mission is the strength of the bank. I am absolutely confident that you will put, as you always have done, the interest, the yearnings, the aspirations of Africa first, and give its bank, your bank, the African Development Bank, and the African Development Fund, the financing needed to help Africa achieve its desired development. As James Champy said, big results requires big ambitions. To develop Africa faster, African leaders are thinking big, and they should. Africa should not think small. Africa's own bank, the African Development Bank, should not think small. And its shareholders should not think small for Africa. It's not about what we can afford for Africa. It is about what Africa needs and deserves. Your Excellencies, governors, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Africa needs you. African integration needs you. And the African Development Bank needs you. Today, the African Development Bank Group is much stronger. It is fit for purpose. We will continue to reinforce our capacity. And we are ready to do more and to achieve greater results for Africa with your collective support. I thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your AAA doesn't need to be maintained, is always constant. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, may we play the video from the Republic of Equatorial Guinea.
Do you know? Do you know that Africa has created the world's largest free trade area? Do you know that the African Continental Free Trade Area will be the future of African development? Do you know that in terms of economic potential and growth, Africa has never been more important on the world stage? 7 of 10 of the world's fastest growing internet populations are in Africa, a trend that will reshape entire economies as new companies leapfrog established technologies, ideas, and infrastructure. And do you know that more than 15 African countries have already banned the use of plastic bags and are taking measures each and every day to combat the massive threats of climate change? Ours is a continent of tolerance and cultural diversity. We don't just teach it, we live it. Ours is a multicultural continent of thousands of languages and several religions. We are like no other. Ours is an Africa of diverse nature, culture, tradition, and, as it has been said for millennia, the birthplace of mankind. Do you know that by the end of the century, 40% of the world's population will be African? Dreaming with ambition, we are the youngest continent in the world. We see and anticipate the future. Today, Africa, this continent of more than 1 billion people, has ratified a new continental free trade agreement that will integrate Africa economically in unprecedented ways. With the free movement of people, goods, services, energy, knowledge, and technologies, just imagine how far and how fast we can move across borders and accelerate economic development. Today, the African Development Bank and Equatorial Guinea welcomes more than 2,000 high-level participants to the 2019 annual meetings of the bank, including heads of state, finance ministers, civil society organizations, thinkers, policy makers, investors, private sector leaders, and numerous stakeholders from all the 80 member countries of the African Development Bank. We intend to bring Africa together far beyond this conference center. Welcome to Equatorial Guinea, a stable and peaceful country that welcomes you with warmth and tenderness. We are a young and ambitious country. We are building for our youth and for the future. We are changing social and economic paradigms. And we are building world-class infrastructure to create opportunities for investment and growth. We are building an Equatorial Guinea that will be an open door to the future of African development. Welcome to Malabo. Welcome to Equatorial Guinea. Welcome to Africa. 1 billion people, one future. We are making a difference.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to invite His Excellency, Mr. Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, President of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea, to deliver his address.
Su Majestad Letsi III, Rey de Lesotho. Excelentísimos.
Excellency Tshisekedi, President of the Republic of Congo. Your Excellency, Minister of the Kingdom of Tsodini, Your Excellencies, President of the constitutional organs, Your Excellency, His Excellency, the Prime Minister, and other members of the government. His Excellency, Mr. Akinwumi Adesina, President of the African Development Bank. Honorable members of the African Development Bank, representatives of African states present at this meeting, distinguished representatives of civil society, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the people and government of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea, I am pleased to welcome to this opening ceremony to all delegations of friendly and brotherly and sister countries which are participating in this 54th annual meeting of the African Development Bank, whose presence we value and appreciate as an act of cooperation and solidarity in pursuit of the development of our continent. We wish to convey to you the fraternal greetings of the people of Equatorial Guinea, and we wish as well for you to enjoy our traditional hospitality. We are here in Sipopo, in an enclave of our capital city that we baptized in 2012 with the name of the City of the African Union, in which you, delegates of all the continents, have gathered for the annual assemblies of the African Development Bank, since more than one decade ago. This place was the remains of a colonial plantation of sugarcane and cocoa that the forest had consumed completely. The city of Malabo, in colonial times, was a small fortress called Santa Isabel that served to export cocoa, palm oil, abaca fibers, sugar cane, cassava, bananas, etc., produced based on blood, sweat, and tears of the sons and daughters of this continent in a regime of forced labor that was far from the decent work that we all advocate today. Santa Isabel, as this colonial administrative enclave, was known before, which we later baptized as Malabo, also served as a neurological center of the colonial order that administered these lands, now known as Equatorial Guinea. Undermining the development aspirations of the natives and, of course, flagrantly violated all human rights contained in the Universal Charter of Human Rights. Here, as well as in the rest of Africa and the world, the colonized people were not human by birth. Therefore, they lacked every right by birth. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to welcome you to Malabo and to this enclave of the City of the African Union, Sipopo, because I know what it has cost us to have what you see here today. I am an experienced man who knows the history of this country, of Africa, and of the world. A few days ago, I turned 77 years, and please allow me to make a comparison of the facts. Ghana, the first independent African country that finally freed themselves from the colonial power, is 62 years old. Modern India is 72 years old. Hong Kong considers them free from colonization Since 1997, the age and historical circumstances that I have had to live give me moral authority to be able to tell you the following. In the world in which I was born, if someone would have dared to say that in 2019 the colonial order would not exist, that among the fastest growing economies on the planet, the majority would be Africans, that the greatest diffusion of new technologies would come to African lands, that Africa would be preparing itself to be the largest area of economic and commercial integration on the planet, and above all, that the destinies of this country will remain in the hands of its sons and daughters, this person would have been branded as crazy and even cruel for such reflections. Colonial order was configured to last 1,000 years. You may read the history and study the historical documents. For this order, and thanks to the determination of people of good faith, brave and courageous people of this African continent and of all the African continents, this ideal was finally dismantled. And I do say formally dismantled because an evil such as colonization, which permeated all layers of the coexistence of humanity, politics, economy, culture, religion, etc., cannot easily be extinguished. It resists and tends to return with new disguises and new insidious words. We should know the history, learn from it, because the past is not easily to bury, and although the colonization was defeated, there still exist remnants and some people and institutions that basically still share this vision of the colonial past. Maybe they do not say it harshly because it is no longer politically correct or morally acceptable due to its facts, which can be easily recognized. In 2011, we opened a Sipopo enclave to host with dignity the African Union Summit, which gathered all African heads of states and governments and their institutions. We specifically built this Sipopo enclave to be worthy of Equatorial Guinea aspirations and the promotion of our union. Surely some ignore this or do not like to remember, but Equatorial Guinea, after it gained its independence in 1968, went through a few years that were characterized by destruction of the limited political and economic fabric of the colony. As was said by the African leader of liberation, independence was not given to us. We achieved it with the help of courageous people from all continents. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, colonization left us with a fragile structural system ready to vanish, unable to fulfill the aims of managing and sustaining a state. That is why we are destined to fail and to fight among brothers. We saw this in many parts of the continent, and the first years of Equatorial Guinea confirmed those fears. But even though we are still alive, during the 80s and until mid-90s, Equatorial Guinea headed the list of the poorest countries on the planet. Barely the international press mentioned suffering and misery of our people. With the exploitation of oil, the appetites that wake up the eyes were placed on Equatorial Guinea instead of asking for the past history of the country and for the horrors that we had suffered. The concerns focused on oil and whether the government would be able to manage the riches of oil, our wealth. As underage, we should not have decided on the use of our resources, and it should be others to come and decide what we should do with the oil. However, we convened the first National Economic Conference in 1997, a second in 2007, and just 1 month ago, we organized the third National Economic Conference. The first conferences aimed to discuss the use of oil revenues, and the recent one was to see how we would exploit the assets that the country has today, how we would integrate into the Sustainable Development Goals agenda and the Africa Agenda of 2063 in our policies of development. We mobilized resources for economic diversification and consolidation of social equity. All these conferences have been attended by civil society, state powers, private sector, and development partners, in which debates have always been decisive, open, and without restrictions. The representations of diplomatic missions of friendly countries and the representatives of international organizations witnessed 1 month ago how Equatorial Guinea discuss its development plans in a transparent and participatory manner. This is the mechanism that we have chosen to decide our development policies based on our resources. We accept a sincere cooperation without interference, and not that others tell us what we have to do. We have always been criticized for the use of oil money. Each step that we have taken has been worthy of criticism. Even this Sipopo enclave, when we built it, we were harshly criticized. The conference hall, the hotel, the golf course, the hospital complex were criticized. The artificial beach, they criticized the villas that were to host the heads of state and government. We did all of this for the dignity of our people and our continent, and that is why we call this part of Malabo the city of the African Union.
Durante aquella primera conferencia,
During that African Union summit, a distinguished son of Africa was unable to attend the meeting as he had announced because in his country there were riots and outbreaks of instability. I am referring to our brother and friend Muammar al-Gaddafi. A short time later, we witnessed what occurred in our brotherly country, instability of a prosperous country, and the consequences that we all know today: slavery, piracy, terrorism, plundering of the country, etc. The new government works hard to put an end to these evils, but the consequences are not only felt in Libya and other parts of Africa, but as in the entire world, as the fact of injustice. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am not opposed to scrutiny of others, but I do defend that this scrutiny should be for the good and not for the evil, not to destabilize and reverse development. We have been accused of despotism, waste, corruption, all kinds of evils, when all we have done is to preserve peace, political stability, and develop our country for our people, for Africa, and for the world. Due to the fact that development is a global aspiration, it is the responsibility of each and every one of the leaders of this planet who must assure the citizens of their respective countries in particular and of humanity in general to advance towards higher levels of well-being and development. Equatorial Guinea has been radically transformed from being one of the poorest countries in the world to become one of the highest per capita incomes in the continent. But development for me is not per capita income. It means expanding the possibilities for people to live in a more dignified life. During these last 10 years, following the guidelines of our national economic conferences, we have massively invested our resources in 4 areas, namely to provide the country with infrastructures, improve governance, invest in human capital, and to promote economic diversification. We have built ports, airports, public buildings, hotels, bridges, roads, social housing, schools, universities, etc. We have expanded our cities and created new cities and new poles of development. Electricity, gas, water, and environmental sanitation. We have created more than 50 rural communities. We have converted them in small cities called urban districts. We have reformed our constitution to guarantee better governance. We've diversified our oil industry. We have trained the staff of public administration, modernized armed forces, and sent our young people to be trained in 5 continents, strengthened our international diplomatic network, supported and led initiatives for the development in Africa as the African Solidarity Trust Fund for Food Security, organized by FAO, with a contribution of $30 million in order to combat hunger, malnutrition, and food insecurity that affects our country. We have also financed the vaccine in order to eradicate malaria. We are committed to eradicate the barriers of development, to the development of the private sector, to improve living conditions of our population. And we have been in solidarity with the noble causes in our continent and outside the continent. But some call this corruption, waste, violation of human rights. But I call it development. And we are achieving this with the support and participation of our people. Who live in peace, with the solidarity of our African brothers and sisters who have helped us to abort several attempts of our enemies to destabilize our country in order to control our natural resources. Equatorial Guinea thanks to the understanding of friendly countries and international organizations that believe without restriction that Equatorial Guinea in particular and Africa in general deserve the opportunity to develop in peace. We would like you to visit more parts of Equatorial Guinea, to go to the other side of this island, to the continental region, and to the borders with Cameroon and Gabon, and you will witness that development exists everywhere in Equatorial Guinea, not just here in Sipopo and Malabo. We believe that it is a privilege to host these annual assemblies at a time when we begin a new policy of diversifying the economy and consolidating social equity. In a context in which Africa is preparing to boost regional integration in order to capitalize on our potential and an ambitious development agenda, the Africa 2063 agenda, in its global context in which humanity expresses itself with a single discourse of development, with political objectives of sustainable development for all. Equatorial Guinea is committed to regional integration for shared prosperity. We count on the African Development Bank to help us achieve economic diversification and consolidation of social equity. And we reiterate that everything that we have done in Equatorial Guinea is thinking of our country and thinking of our continent and looking at the world. We also have 3 reflections. One, for the President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Adesina, and the ADB Board. Another, for governors of the African Development Bank who have gathered here in Sipopo, and the last one for all those attending these assemblies. To Dr. Adesina, President of the ADB and the ADB Board, we wish to say the following. The reputation of Dr. Adesina precedes him. An excellent job as Minister of Agriculture in his country, achieving what seemed impossible, to guarantee food security. We have closely followed his work as President of the ADB, in charge of a directive, and his boundless energy and the enthusiasm that he arouses. We encourage you to continue this way. Regional and non-regional partners of the bank to support a very noble cause, which is the development of Africa and of humanity. To the ADB governors present here, you will be discussing important issues related to the future of the African Development Bank and therefore with the future of Africa and of humanity. Be brave, as our dear Nelson Mandela said. It is always impossible until it is done. And I all wish to say that all physical impossibility we're able to reach. You should also make decisions that may seem impossible to adopt. You should take these decisions because you will have to define the future of the African Development Bank. And you should do it thinking that Africa deserves the opportunity to develop itself and that the African Development Bank is the engine of this development. To all those who have come to our country for these assemblies, I wish to invite you to know our country, journalists, businessmen, ministers, governors, civil society. I invite all of you to know the true image of Equatorial Guinea. I wish to transmit a message to all of you. Equatorial Guinea is open to business so that men and women from our continent and from all over the world come, settle, and feel safe in investing for full development, for the prosperity of Equatorial Guinea in particular, Africa, and the world in general. To conclude, we reiterate our greetings of friendship to all the delegations participating in this assembly, and I conclude by declaring open the 54th Assembly of the African Development Bank. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency, the President. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Equatorial Guinea is open for business, and there is an open invitation to come, do business, and settle. No wonder the foreign minister said, I have earned a passport of Equatorial Guinea because of my constant coming here to organize and arrange for these annual meetings. So we'll come, Mr. President, and the world will come to Equatorial Guinea. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the opening ceremony. Permit me, however, to make some announcements before we leave the room. Immediately after this, there will be the high-level presidential panel in this room. After that, there will be a group photograph exclusively for governors, heads of state, and the special guests at the photo wall outside the plenary. Following the photo session, there will be a high-level luncheon hosted by the President of the African Development Bank by invitation. This brings the opening ceremony to a close. Muchas gracias, thank you, and God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage.
Señores y señores, bienvenidos a esta nueva actuación.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be shortly, in the spirit of Africa integration, broadcasting the high-level presidential dialogue across the African continent. The topic, boosting Africa's economic integration. Joining me for this discussion already on stage, President Akinwumi Adesina, President of the African Development Bank. His Excellency Mr. Ambrose Dlamini, the Right Honourable Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Eswatini. His Excellency Mr. Felix Tshisekedi, President of the Democratic Republic of Congo. His Majesty King Letsie III, King of the Kingdom of Lesotho. And His Excellency Mr. Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, President of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea. A round of applause as we start into this high-level presidential dialogue, welcoming the guests to the stage. As we said, ladies and gentlemen, this broadcast is going live across the African continent in the spirit of African integration that we celebrate here today. I'm going to ask you to take your seats as we cross onto the satellite platform that will take us across Africa. Welcome to this high-level presidential dialogue on boosting Africa's economic integration. Joining me on stage, President Akinwumi Adesina, President of the African Development Bank. His Excellency, Mr. Ambrose M. Dlamini, the Right Honourable Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Eswatini. His Excellency, Mr. Felix Tshisekedi, President of the Democratic Republic of Congo. His Majesty King Letsie III, King of the Kingdom of Lesotho, and His Excellency, Mr. Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, President of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea. And welcome to all of you tuning in live from across the African continent to this high-level presidential dialogue, starting with President Adesina. We've seen your statements, sir, that what counts is action and results on the ground. I know that the African Union is targeting intra-Africa trade to reach some 50% by 2045. And I know that the African Development Bank has put a milestone in the sand for 2025 at 20%. Where are we to achieving that number, sir?
Well, first and foremost, let me use this opportunity to thank His Excellency President Obiang for hosting this annual meeting of the African Development Bank, and also to thank all the excellencies that are here to joining us at this particular meeting. It's really exciting to think about the future of Africa. If you look at Africa, you got 54 countries. Individually, those countries are going to be weak because they're smaller countries. But when they are united, the economies are going to be really massive in terms of growth, in terms of jobs, in terms of trade, and in terms of investment. And we are so thrilled at the African Development Bank that the African leaders have agreed and they are rolling out the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Now think about it. That Africa Continental Free Trade Area